Don't get me in trouble. Calling you mean names. I'll stop working by the No Scott today?
He's on vacation in Hawaii.
Hawaii.
But a volcano just erupted there, so you know.
One of them erupted the last time I was there.
Really?
Yeah, and we went over to see it.
I wonder
Family Day event.
I probably,
I went to his wife.
and then barely got out. They were shutting the airport down.
Hey, ma'am, you don't know.
Yeah, because of ash. But we went down to see it
Baseball game this year.
on observation, and then like a day later, while I was there, it took off and started. And you could see the fire. We took a helicopter, and you could see it stopped running.
So maybe if I get you to go, agree to go again, maybe I can actually get your husband to go. Just enjoy baseball games.
Yeah.
Just looking at me.
you still can observe it.
Oh, there's tape.
Like certain locations,
Yeah.
but not
Maybe I'll get it.
Well, it's the ash. They started shutting. We passed a couple of roads. Just they were shutting parks down.
The weekday games, my family never goes to town for them, so it's super easy to
Yeah.
smack people and go.
Yeah. No. We got out about it.
Did you get to see
We
your
waited
son?
another day or so. We'd have had to wait, but the ash was starting to close the airport down.
At his house.
It's all right.
In my mind, he's like 14 years old.
Yeah.
He's 28.
Well, it's an interesting place to see volcanoes. I was in Italy and on Sicily, and we drove to go to this volcano, and it blew while we were in the parking lot. But I had left my camera in the truck in my hotel because I was charging the battery, and I had to take a pic. But the top blew.
Mount Etna?
Yeah.
Where's my sister?
Shot off a big blast,
My brothers were there.
and then we couldn't go up. They have some big trucks that take you up. We couldn't go up because of the ash. So I may be the problem. There's a common denominator. Twice volcano went off while I was there. All right, that's all on live recording, I'm sure. All right.
So to scroll through, I'll need to be over there. Is that what we ended up with?
Yes, unless you want Sylvia to scroll through for you. You need your computer on that mode. So if you want, does somebody else have it that can scroll through it for you? If you want to stay on the mic?
I can yell at you from over there. I don't care.
Well, but for the recording, for the people.
I've sent it to everybody. You have somebody on the team, Travis or somebody. I just sent you this new 16.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Out of my computer's in there.
Somebody here with a computer that can take it up there and then just do the scroll through?
Maris, can you take those fancy new boots over there and scroll for us? What's up? We need to see those fancy new boots over there. We're gonna show them the world.
Say your $4,000 custom made.
I just look up your scroll over there.
Will you scroll through?
You don't do any talking, you just have to listen to him to move.
Sit down, Maris. You're fired.
Show them your
Bullet
boots.
can do it.
Do we have, can I plug in my?
And if you can't do yours, I'll give you mine.
I've got cord.
Take his.
First time's free.
We can look at this one.
What's the second time?
Well, then you're.
No, I can I take a rain check on my first So I think actually what I'll do is so that I get picked up, I'm going to stand up here and address.
Okay. And I apologize for our tardiness.
Wait, it wasn't Should I just write that now while we're setting up? Now, if I could have your attention. So I want to address the public at this time. We really appreciate all of the members of the public who come and visit us during our negotiation sessions. I know that not all of you have been here the entire time, so I kind of want to review some things from the beginning of our negotiations so that the public is aware. We are not required to have the public attend these meetings. We do it 100% to have transparency so that you can see how it works. However, it is not a participatory meeting. That became really clear during the last meeting, and no, hard feelings or anything, but clearly a lot of people didn't quite understand how the process works. We do not have time to meet with the public during our negotiation sessions. We are here to work. When we're not in this room, we are caucusing and discussing what just happened during the session. So although we really, really appreciate you coming, we hope that we can continue to keep these open to the public, but we do need to have a sense of decorum. So I just wanted to make sure that you know it's not anything negative, but we just want to make sure that you understand how it works. It's not a public hearing. Okay? Thanks.
All right, I think we owe you a 16. We sent it over. And before we start going through it, I'll just say, like, we very much have, our team has done a pretty good job, I believe, in hearing the concerns and the desires of the manager as it relates to oversight. And, we've had hours, literally hours of team conversations, trying to figure out what is fair, what is a good process that will actually work. I don't think anyone wants to set something up that's just gonna fail if we put it into place. What movement can we make that's going to make some of the activists kind of, more comfortable with oversight. At the same time, recognizing that, and I've said it a million times, it's one thing for me to agree to something, it's another thing for our membership to agree to something. So kind of trying to keep all those things in mind. We've done yet another kind of rewrite of 16, and we'll roll through it. So section 1, kind of just outline what, take existing contract language and make a few changes there. Let me see. We did add a few things in the definitions. We very clearly kind of lay out what a complaint is, who a complainant is. We talked about anonymous complaint. We included the language that you guys had included in one of your previous versions, dealing with kind of the chain of command issue, but then also like these whistleblower situations. So there's a few places where we tried to kind of preemptively not have to go back and forth and just include some contract language that y'all had previously included that we can live with. We define normally assigned working hours. We define, internal complaint and external complaint. On a critical incident, subsection 6, we've previously talked about this, but improvised versus improved is just a language cleanup. Vast majority of this definition comes out of policy. And we've also added to the bottom a definition of a firearm. Big thing here that we understand, right? Like, the ATF is probably the highest law enforcement agency in the country that kind of gives a definition of what is a firearm. Then people kind of base the other definitions off the ATF's definition. So just trying to really, in the spirit of what is a critical incident, what are those things that are going to be captured there. We don't think that somebody using like a less lethal shotgun in a way that doesn't create serious bodily injury, or there's a new taser system that is, will be the new taser moving forward. We're not currently using it, but I can't imagine that in the life of this contract that we wouldn't eventually be there. And so Axon is working towards trying to figure out, is this going to be still classified as a firearm, is it not? Nonetheless, we think the intent of that definition of critical incident, when it talks about a firearm, is an actual firearm, not less lethal devices. So we've added that in. We've talked about, or we've given a definition rather, of what is an investigation, what is an inquiry. Then we've created a couple of positions that we've named a complaint intake specialist and a conduct review specialist. And really, in our team's kind of move to embrace this change in oversight, we recognize that the OPO's office will probably be very siloed, right? Like we will probably have people that are working on complaint intakes, and we'll probably have people that are working on actually, the review of officer behavior, and so kind of delineating out those different roles and responsibilities and giving a definition of those folks. Section 3, Office of Police Oversight. Hearing and understanding y'all's desire, the city's desire, the manager's desire to capture some things within a city ordinance. We've tried to only put things in there that we absolutely have to live with. So you can see, specifically authorized in subsection B, right? We talk about the ability to accept anonymous complaints, right? One of the things that we had talked about previously is including those things that we believe that we need to include to get around 143 issues, and so being able to accept anonymous complaints still is included in our version of this Article 16, as is the ability to publicly release recommendations made by the director of the OPO to the chief of police. Subsection C, we have kept in the limitations, right? No subpoena power for officers, or no subpoena power, just generally, and no administrative requirement, including, but not limited to, an order of the manager or the department, that an officer appear, present evidence. Let's see. Subsection D there, I think really gets to the meat and potatoes of Article 16 moving forward, if we could move forward under an agreement along these lines, right? So we've written in there that parties agree to establish a model between IAAD and the OPO, wherein representatives from each respective department conduct collaborative investigations into alleged police misconduct under terms and conditions set forth herein. And then it later says, specifically agreed by both parties that representatives from the OPO shall not initiate or conduct investigations independently of internal affairs. So what we're trying to capture here is very clearly and openly embracing a collaborative investigation model, but not necessarily a model where one is doing something without the other. So subsection E talks about conduct review specialist. And here we refer to it as a CRS at times. And you guys had previously talked about kind of moving to NACOL. It's not, and just saying, hey, we're going to use NACOL standards. It's not something that we're super comfortable with. And so we've just kind of spelled out some of the things that we would like to see in terms of training and minimum qualifications for someone who's actually going to be conducting a collaborative investigation along with an internal affairs investigator. So you can see bachelor's degree, 4 years of experience. We've listed out some training there, including write-outs. A lot of this stuff is coming from the training requirements that we've previously required for the panel. So it just kind of makes sense that if it's probably good for one, it's good for the other. We recognize that there's probably other additional training that the city would want for those people to have. And see, ride outs downtown in subsection 4 and then subsection 5. These are classes that we currently send our investigators to. And as you know, folks on our team, myself included, have taken some of these classes, and I just think it's a good thing to have that perspective for the people that are going to actually be the people that participate in the investigation process. Subsection F, access to confidential information. We've tried to do a better job of defining what is unfettered access, right? Unfettered access is a phrase that's been in our contract as far back as the copies that I have. I think the oldest copy of contract I have is from '04, and unfettered access is in there. And so just trying to spell that out. And the last sentence in there, you know, obviously as these folks have continue to have access to this information, I think it's vitally important, probably to the department much more than the association, but just to make sure that we're not getting ourselves into a CJIS issue with the state of Texas, and you know, potentially ultimately having CJIS access restricted, that the folks that are involved in these cases meet minimum CJIS requirements. Mostly because in practice, right, CJIS information, there's potential for the CJIS information to get put into a case file, whether it's through the SIU side, through the IA side, and then when that information comes over and folks have access to it, if folks that would not meet the minimum qualifications to access CJIS information are running afoul of those requirements, then it's a tremendously, there's potential for it to be a tremendous problem with the state of Texas and the FBI in terms of, again, this is a departmental issue much more than it is a union issue, but would make it incredibly difficult for officers to do their jobs if we were to have our CJIS access restricted. Subsection G, external complaint intake. You know, we've just listed out here that the OPO still, you know, remains the responsible party for external complaint intake. We've written some language in here that says, you know, in the event that Internal Affairs is contacted, that the complainant shall be kind of moved over to OPO for that intake. You know, identify that the complaint intake specialist is the person who actually does the complaint intake, and has just kind of listed out a few other little details there. We've listed out the things that the complaint intake specialist can kind of ask, and you know, the things that should be included in that complaint intake. Subsection 2 there is based off existing contract language dealing with, you know, digitally recording the communication that the new complaint intake specialist would have with our complainant. We have added in a time requirement for the complaint intake specialist to forward the completed complaint along with any other recordings, documents, any information provided by the complainant, both to the complaint review specialist on the OPO side, but then also to the internal affairs investigator. So, kind of, it's really the first time that we've kind of laid out this collaborative nature of the process. And then we've written language in here that allows the complaint review specialist to conduct a limited preliminary review of these, and then based on that preliminary review, the ability to recommend a classification for the complaint. And then we've written some language in here that basically says, in that limited review, if the complaint review specialist believes that there's policy violations, to send that over within 30 business days. I think that's actually supposed to be 30 calendar days of receipt of the complaint. And then, Internal Affairs will also conduct a preliminary investigation of all external complaints and make a final determination as to complaint classification. Internal complaints. I will still remain the processing house for internal complaints as outlined in policy. Subsection I, complaint investigation. I've just reiterated here, Internal Affairs has a final decision-making authority on classification of complaints. In instances where IA determines formal investigation is going to be initiated, if we're actually going to start an investigation, then the Internal Affairs investigator is going to notify the appropriate conduct review specialist. I don't know, in trying to think of how this would actually play out, I don't know if it would be right a 1-and-1, like Robin is the IA investigator and I'm the civilian review specialist, and all of her cases I'm working with her, or if people would just kind of you'd work a case with one person, you'd work a case with another person, whatever. Either way, however that works, whatever process makes sense to say, okay, hey, Robin, send it to Thomas, or hey, Robin, today you're going to send it to Ron, whatever. We just want that collaborative nature to be there. That next paragraph, again, kind of leads to, what I think is a pretty big lift on our side, which is, we've written contract language that says Internal Affairs and the conduct review specialist shall collaborate in all aspects of the investigation, leading up to and including the investigation interviews. At no time shall either party conduct follow-up interviews with complainants or witnesses without both parties present and able to participate, except as provided below. The expectations that we've added in there are not intended in the least bit to say, like, hey, we're going to pull the wool over your eyes, we're going to have all these gotcha moments where we're trying to allow Internal Affairs to circumvent the process. We just recognize that there might be situations where, because of a 180-day deadline, something of that nature, you might have a need to push something forward quickly, and if someone's calendar doesn't line up, should we, potentially put Internal Affairs in a position where you might run afoul of that. And we've basically said, that Internal Affairs investigator is not going to do that unilaterally. They need to get their supervisors on board. We've added in that sworn personnel shall be interviewed during the normally assigned business or working hours. Access to DRHs, subsection J. This is also based off of current contract language, that the OPO and other members of the OPO may attend DRHs and other administrative hearings. And then we've added that neither the director of the OPO nor other members of the OPO or Internal Affairs can, remain in the hearing while the chain of command discusses final classification and or appropriate discipline. Again, current contract language, we recognize that there might be a desire by some folks to have the OPO or the representative in that entire process, but it's a pretty firm feeling of ours that if we're gonna separate out, like if we're moving to an investigation model, then it's an investigation model, and just like Internal Affairs that does their investigations on our side doesn't stay in there to give their 2 cents on whether or not discipline should be imposed or to what level, we feel that's the same way. Further, 143 talks about the person that is the investigator not being the person that decides discipline. So We think this is long rooted in history and in the spirit of fairness. We have unfortunately had a few situations in our department's kind of recent history where officers have won arbitration decisions in which arbitrators have said, like, hey, we're not completely being fact finders, right? We're trying to find facts that support a decision. So don't want to run into more of those issues, and we think this is probably the most fair way to accomplish the things that we're trying to accomplish. Quarterly meetings, y'all had put assistant manager for government. We assume that's for government that works. So we pulled that language change from y'all's, both in the quarterly meeting and the annual meetings there. We agree that moving forward, having an assistant manager involved in those conversations is probably a good thing for the quarterly meetings, and obviously having the manager there once a year to be able to have conversations would not hurt.
The rest is from previous proposals.
And I'm being told the rest is from previous proposals. I'm going to scroll through just to make sure. Oh, on under Section 4, Civilian Review Panel, in the access to confidential information by panel, we've also included the CJIS language. It's a copy and paste from the above. Just recognizing that there's a potential there, right, for if panel members are going to have access to something that potentially has CJIS information, last thing that we need as an agency is for someone who's not able to access CJIS information be given access and put the entire department's access to CJIS information into jeopardy. I think the rest is stuff that we have previously put forward. Let me just keep scrolling. Previously put this up?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, trying to accomplish the things that you guys have set out to accomplish in a way that that's fair and allows for due process rights for our members, and also gives us something that we can sell our membership.
We definitely appreciate the movement and the presentation, and we're going to definitely take a closer look at this and when we caucus for sure and go through it a little more in detail. I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions?
Did y'all have any other presentations now, or?
No, ma'am. Okay. We got your 13.
Just one.
And we have one small thing on 13.
It's just about the establishment of the committee for the leadership development program. We wanted to add language similar to like other committee creation, like where the APA has, an opportunity to collaborate in the leadership development program committee. I can throw it there quickly if you guys would like me to.
Sure, that would be
Okay,
great.
yeah, I'll do that.
Other than that, we're ready to sign off
Yeah,
on 13.
everything else was fine.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. We'll get JJ to make a leadership program for us real quick. We can,
And we'll take a look at your OPO proposal. I will tell you, gut reaction, I'm very discouraged I thought we had made it clear, our intent was absolutely to get OPO out of the contract with the understanding that you would need some limitations put upon that. We presented a page of limitations. Obviously, those weren't enough because you came back with 8 pages of limitations. Maybe we have a different construct. You're describing it the same way, but 8 pages of limitations on OPO is not taking OPO out of the contract at all. It is 100% leaving it in the contract. We will review it, but I am very discouraged. I will tell you that right now. And I think if you don't have anything else right now, we should probably caucus and review it.
Okay.
Are you guys going to do a monetary proposal today? Because I'm looking at it, and even though you've given a couple of monetary presentations, I don't see a movement since June 15th. Am I incorrect on that?
Well, you're correct, but
So the question was, are you going to have something
I
on that
think we've
today?
given you one until the city's prepared to make a realistic offer.
Well, we have given you counteroffers since
You
then.
gave us one offer.
We have given you more than one offer, sir.
Are you still at 10% over 4 years?
We have given you an offer on,
You added $50 to 2 special pays.
we also changed our base pay substantially. We're up to $51 million in what we last presented to you
Yeah.
since the original presentation, which was around 31 million. So we have substantially increased our offer. So I think that is quite realistic, and for you not to have given us anything since June, when the total of your offer was, Lord, I can't even tell you, how many, $137 million of new money?
127.
127, oh, pardon me, $127 million of new money that even your team is laughing at is, not really very good faith bargaining to not even come with any counter at all. So we will take a look at this. We really hope that you're going to put some money on the table today. That's a little more realistic from your perspective, from our perspective, so that we can consider this. I really want to make some movement on this contract. I'm very discouraged from what I just saw, though. So I think it's 11:14.
Let us have a conversation on the money side of it. And I hear you. And I guess I would say that, like, I understand there's a strong desire to take everything out of the contract and just trust us because we're not going to have problems. The problem, and I would tell the manager if he was here, right? The problem that we are up against is the problems that we had under our current contract. Like, this is a contract that Spencer signed. And had Ken not retired in August and we got a new contract, like, the same people that signed this contract would be the guys that signed the next contract. And so I understand the desire by the manager and by the city to pull everything out and say, just trust us. And maybe there's a day where we get there, but there's not a tremendous amount of trust by our officers to be open to that. And so what we've tried to do, what we tried to do was take the things that you guys have expressed that we need to do, right? This guy thinks I'm crazy, but we're making movement from an oversight, and we're still calling it oversight, right? But it's not oversight. It is active participation in an investigation. And for us to make a lift, and for this team to be willing to make that lift, and then for this team to be willing to go back to, we're down to 1,525 cops at this department, and to try to explain to those cops why this is not a terrible contract, right? Well, this is not the end of the world, and that we can still live under these parameters. I understand that it's not exactly what you guys want, but I also recognize that This is a vast departure from where we're at. And I asked you guys a month ago, like, is there a desire by the city to civilianize internal affairs? And I was told no, right? Okay. Like, I recognize that, you know, language in 143 allows for certain things, it doesn't allow for other things, right? Like, I also recognize that we'll just end up in court if we fall under 143 and the city does whatever the hell they want to do, just like we ended up in court back in 2018 when we fell out of contract. And I don't think that does any good for anybody. And I completely hear what you're saying. But I also have to go sell this thing to 1,500 cops.
We understand that, and we know that's a tough hurdle, but we're trying to make a situation where you assist in defining the constructs of how it works and the limitations on how it works, and keep the limitations that make your membership comfortable, and put the limitations within the contract without putting all the processes in the contract and how OPO actually runs, et cetera. So it's a different philosophy, I believe. I was hoping that
So
you.
to that extent, I guess I'd be very interested in what parts of this you guys would want to take out that you see as process. And if it's us defining what complaint intake is, then, you know, let us figure that out. If it's us talking about timelines, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to put timelines in when we have past experience, right? Lived history from a very, I think everyone knows, right? A very contentious relationship in the past that led to a tremendous amount of contract grievances.
Well, let us take a look at it and see if we can define, you know, how we philosophically think that this is problematic, and then specifically what we have issues with. So let us discuss that. You know, this is first blush, this is my gut reaction, but that doesn't mean that's our answer after we caucus. Give us some time to, you know, absorb what you've given us. And
Okay.
We will try to do something. You want to say 1 o'clock?
Sure.
Is that reasonable?
Thank you. Just hold my hand. Chief, how was your trip?
I don't know.
Your vacation?
Got stop meeting like this.
You were gone, right? The first week of November? I will never be one of those people who run a turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning.
Well, I'm very. Good? We're just gonna talk live from over here. Is that okay, or you gonna be over there?
Bernard?
Can you hear me whenever I talk out?
Yeah.
Very good. No?
Give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Check.
Let Travis on the computer. Oh, no, he's got it changed. Okay.
All right. So we, for a few weeks have been kind of tinkering with numbers, trying to understand. I will very publicly thank you, Mr. Gistel, for doing the work to help us understand what causes some of these costs to be what they are. So we appreciate your work. This pay proposal still, ultimately, it's a 20% wage increase over 4 years. We've moved the numbers around. It brings base wages in Mr. Gistel's initial calculation was, the base wage increase was like 110 million, I believe. This gets it down to what we believe is somewhere around 87 million. This is using Chris's number of a 1 percentage point costing about $2 million. And obviously carrying those numbers across, right? So a first year base wage increase, we're being charged 4 times for it, second year, 3 times, and so on. So 4.5% base wage increase in the first year. We recognize that pretty much everyone else in the city's gotten at least a 4% base wage increase. Other folks have gotten even more. Our hope is that with a strong wage proposal that we can retain some of these folks that are leaving the Austin Police Department to go to other jobs. We also recognize, that we don't sleep on the fact that it's a good solid wage proposal. So we've dropped it down to 3% in year 2, stepped it back up to 4%, and then stepped it up to 8.5% in year 4. I know that this will cause a bit of work for the budget office. It'll cause a bit of work for council members to save for that year 4. But we have tried to make it something that's not completely outrageous, while at the same time, is in line with what we believe we need in terms of base wage increases to sell to our members the movement that we've made, that we're willing to make on oversight. We've also moved off of many of the soft pay issues. You scroll down, Shane. We very, very thoughtfully worked through what are those soft pay issues that we believe are most important to our police department. And again, I feel like I've said this a bunch of times. I believe that these are changes that are probably more beneficial to the city, to the police department, than they are to the union. But we have an increasingly hard time getting qualified officers to volunteer to be FTOs at our police department. Moving from from the current wages for FTO pay to 5.8% of the officer step 10 base wage. So that's what we're talking about there, just so we know. And if there's a better way to write that, we can. But we're looking at base officer pay, taking 5.8% of the annual pay, dividing that up into a monthly stipend, and then if we need to pay that out over 24 paychecks or whatever, that's fine. But that's what that number is. So at first glance, that move goes from $175 to about $300.
Yeah, it's about $303.99.
Okay. The second thing that we did, looking at the different places to put money, we are living through a problem in our police department right now, wherein the only way that we're getting, shouldn't say the only way, for the vast majority of our overtime assignments that are on night shift, we struggled to fill those until we went to a double time overtime kind of system. And so one of the things that we would like to see and that we would like to do is leaving shift differential the same for the evening shift officers that it is right now, but then creating a separate night shift differential that Mr. Gistel has already costed out. So just for night shifts that start at 5 p. or later, and that would be 10% of that same kind of spot.
Could you clarify that just really quick?
Yes, ma'am.
When you said leaving the evening shift as it is now, do you mean as it is now or as it is in the previous proposal or?
As it is currently in contract.
Currently in contract?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So all the other soft pay issues other than these are we would like to leave in current contract language. FTO, we'd like to make a move to a percentage with that increase. And then night shift differential for those shifts that start after 5, we'd like to see a move from the current practice to this new percentage as well. Those two things we have costed out because it's things that Mr. Gistel had previously costed out on our first proposal. That was about another $2.5 million, is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 3.
Yeah. I don't have a good estimate on what a move on longevity from 107 to 150. Chris, if there's an easy way for you to tell us, like, hey, every dollar you want to increase, it's going to cost you this much over the life of the contract, that would be very helpful for our team, if that's something that you can do relatively easily. So we think that we've made movement from 27.7 down somewhere to the low 90s. 127.7 down to the low 90s. And we also believe that in our move on the soft money that we're trying to do the things that are needed to help the police department accomplish some of the strategic kind of shortcomings that we have right now in our agency. Questions?
I don't think so. We appreciate the movement, appreciate knowing with specificity, what your more targeted areas are than others on your soft money. I think that's
Yep.
very helpful. And I think we'll take a look at it and appreciate the offer.
Just kill it. Okay.
Are you all set for us to do ours?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so give Sylvia just a minute to set up.
No problem.
walk through Articles 10, 14, 19, 20, and Article 2. And 10 is pretty simple. I didn't have in my notes that we had agreed to it, so I just kind of wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page here. Can you scroll down a little bit, Sylvia? We had accepted the deletion of the second paragraph of 4A, and we had previously agreed, scroll down a little bit more, to that way back in, I believe, May. So I wanted to just confirm that this is essentially TA'd.
Give me just a second, I'll tell you.
I think we had an issue,
Oh, you did? Okay.
and it's not an issue that we've brought up yet.
Okay.
We probably need to revisit that.
Okay, that's totally
Um,
fine.
And we can get that relatively quickly.
Yeah, we didn't have it in our notes as a TA, so that I'm glad we're bringing it up now.
I'm glad so too, and it's not something that we have previously put out there and kind of talked about back and forth, but it's something that's come up here recently
Okay.
again, and so
Good to know.
it warrants at least a conversation.
But go ahead and we'll.
Sure. Then Article 14, and I know we had previously TA'd this, but we did want to propose a small change, small but significant change. Sylvia, if you scroll down to Section 6, Pay and Seniority. And this is to do with the lateral hires and the modified hiring process. What we wanted to do is any pay rate established by, for lateral hires, right? Any pay rate established by the chief shall not exceed that of an officer with 10 years
Hang on a
experience.
second, she's not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Section 6,
Just a little bit up. Stop,
stop,
right there. No, just a little bit up.
slightly a
Down.
little bit
No,
up.
a little bit down.
Nope.
No, wrong way.
Go to-
Stop.
There you go. So the chief of police may determine the pay rate for each cadet, and previously it was limited to like a level 2 year, right? So what we would want to do is expand that up to 10 years. Up to 10 years doesn't mean that it has to go to that level, but we were hoping that this would help with recruitment and hiring.
And just as a point, we are not costing this out against you or anything like that. It is just, it's already within the chief's discretion to work it within his budget. So if he's able to do that and needs a 8-year pay to get a 8-year lateral hire, he could, but it's nothing to do with your costing models.
The next article is 19. And so we had talked about Section 2, if you scroll down a little bit, Sylvia. We had talked about Section 2 our last session, and one of our proposals there you go, that we would follow the job transfer assignments according to current policy. And initially, our proposal just kind of included a heads up to APA. And Thomas, you had mentioned that that wasn't quite enough. So what we included here under B is a committee will be formed, similar to the committee that was already formed in creating the policy. My understanding is that that worked very well. The end product of that policy is very good. So what we wrote here is, should the chief seek to change the transfer policy, a committee consisting of sworn and civilian staff will be formed to provide policy revision recommendations to the chief. The recommended policy revisions by the committee will be reviewed by APA for input prior to submitting to the chief for final approval. So that was us trying to kind of meet your interest the last time we met. As far as Section A, it's just taking out the word intranet, sworn application portal, just kind of more updating it. And that should be a substantive change.
Any questions?
Otherwise, the rest of 19 remains the same, and I believe the rest of 19 we're essentially in agreement on. Our next article is 20, which is grievances. Section 3, our understanding is that I think we're all in agreement there. The The change we're making is in step 4. And if you recall, go to step 4. Yeah, there you go, to step 1. Scroll down a little bit more, Sylvia. Step 4, the third paragraph. When it talks about the parties specifically agree that the arbitrator's authority shall be strictly limited to interpreting and applying explicit provisions of the agreement, shall not have the authority to modify the agreement. Our last proposal included additional language such as add, subtract, and modify. We just withdrew that. We're proposing to go back to the status quo on paragraph 3 of section 4. And then with the
No, go back up,
Oh.
Sylvia. There, no, there.
There, no, there. Here also, our last discussion regarding the appeal of the arbitrator's award, we had kind of reformatted this, and specifically under bullet point 3 there, the arbitrator's decision, when you can appeal an arbitrator's award is if the arbitrator's decision represents a clear and manifest error of law. We had added the word or fact. We had a very robust discussion about that. We are going to go ahead and withdraw or fact. We think that what's included in here now is substantially, we've obviously reformatted it, but it doesn't really change substantively what was already in there anyway. And we think the biggest hangup was obviously the or fact, and we're going to go ahead and withdraw that. The next article is Article 2, which is definitions. Calendar day, we are going to go ahead and accept your proposal for calendar day. For Article 7, for number 7, for definition of chief in number 7, we don't have a problem with the chief or a sworn designee when it makes sense. What we don't want to include right now is that whole definition in definitions. When we've gone through each time it's been proposed in the various articles, I think we've agreed to all of the sworn additions except for one, which is in Article 19, only because it makes more sense administratively, maybe not to include sworn. So I think we've agreed to all the inclusions of sworn except for one, so we do not want to have sworn be implied throughout the whole contract if it doesn't make sense. So that's our response there. For 15, we're fine with the addition of TLGC as the Texas Local Government Code. When we met last time, you made it clear that we had not responded to certain things, so we're just trying to make sure that we wrap some of these small things up.
On sworn there, if, it sounds like there's more situations where a designee is sworn than non-sworn. Would it not make sense for us just to identify it as sworn here in the larger picture, and then the places where we need to kind of carve out that designee could be a civilian, that we carve that out?
We can look at that. I
Okay.
mean, I went back to Article 19 where we had kind of specifically excluded y'all's inclusion of sworn.
Do you remember what that was in reference to?
It had to do with notifying the APA and LRO. It had to do with notifications, and
Okay.
it seemed pretty minuscule, but I'd have to go back and look,
Okay.
so. Right. But yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
And that's what we have so far right now for y'all to work on or look at while we go back and we take a look at your wages.
You're gonna send all that to us?
Yes. Got that right now.
What a great picture. No, it's my son showing Russian.
So I guess we will go.
Did you want to mention the promotions?
Oh, yes. And so Article 13, it sounds like we're pretty much on the same page with everything except for one minor thing. And when you send that over, we can take a look at that. And
Yeah, well, I'll make that change and then I'll send it over to you. You sent that over earlier this week, correct?
correct. And I just sent right now 10, 14, 19, 20, and 2.
See if I can get internet in this building or not.
There's a separate one here than upstairs. Just look at your guest. We have to sign on separately too here. Those will have a response to them on OPO and finances.
Do you guys anticipate responding to, where are we at on 11? Who's giving the last on 11?
So
They just said no. Well, that was your
that
response.
was
You might have
that was a
smiled,
few-
but you did say no.
That was a few meetings ago. But tomorrow, and that's what we were just talking about right now, is should we break for the day and we can have a response for y'all on OPO and some money articles, which would include 11. So what we would like to have for tomorrow with our money would be 7, 8, 9, and 11. And a response on OPO.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And then we'll have 13 ready for you. What else do you guys need from us? Obviously, we need to have a conversation on our, we need to have an internal conversation on 10. And then we'll talk about this desire to pay new guys 10-year officer wages internally. Understand the why there. We'll have that conversation. And then we'll talk about 19 and 20. And then what I'd like to do on 2, on the sworn designee, is we'll get his cleaned up version and go in there and kind of look and see where you guys have pushed back on the sworn designee in 19. You said 19, correct?
Yeah.
And then other places. And I don't know, maybe I'm being unreasonable, but we'll look at it for 2. So we'll get some work done and be ready to get back at it tomorrow. Tomorrow is not here, correct?
Correct. It's at Burleson. The one that was hard to find?
One with all the windows.
By the KinderCare.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
And I did want to mention, we'll switch caucus rooms with you, because I know that was inconvenient. And if we have to use that building again, we'll just keep switching back and forth.
Okay. Thank you.
See, I can compromise.
We're gonna show
We'll
up the
see.
bottom one and then they can kick us out of here.
That's right. That's right.